Remember last year's amazing trip? That cute first birthday party? All those photos, all those memories can be freed from your phone with a Shutterfly photo book. Rediscover and share your favorite moments with those you love. You'll be amazed how easy it is to make a photo book with Shutterfly and enjoy it for years to come. Get 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
Hello, Death by Southwest listeners. Welcome to a strangely on time Monday bonus mini crime episode. I do have a crime, and it really started out as like a mini crime. There was almost no information that I could find online about this story that I think ChatGPT suggested this to me, because on ChatGPT I can put in, I'd like to tell a story in 30 minutes. So can you find me one that has enough information to cover a 30-minute podcast, but not so much information that it's going to be, take me days and days to research it. And anyways, so ChatGPT suggested, or maybe Gemini, the Android AI. I've been using both to try and see which one I like better, which one's better. And now I'm distracted because I could just hear myself swallow into the microphone. And I noticed a comment, I think I mentioned it on whatever I did last week, if I published anything, that we got a review on Apple that somebody was like, I just started listening and I can't stand all the mouth sounds. Let's see if I can find that review real quick. I'll try not to make any mouth sounds into the microphone. I can't, how do people avoid that? I guess they edit. Well, I'm not doing that right now. I would love to get back. I would love to get to the point where I am financially, I'd like to get to the point where I'm making enough money from my actual work that this, whether I'm making money from it or not, I have the time and to dedicate to editing, because I liked editing and putting in the music and stuff. I mean, it does sound a lot better. Okay, so smacking. Anon, cause I'm scared. So somebody anonymous says, I mean, they gave us 3 stars, so like, I'll take it. That's not that bad. I mean, it's definitely better than 1 or 2 stars. Says, I've only heard 2 episodes, 86 and 87, and it's good, but the mouth sounds directly in my ears makes my skin crawl. It was hard to ignore. I usually don't complain about things. Sorry. And also, you don't have to say sorry. If this person is still listening, I appreciate you leaving a review and being honest. I always say that. I'd rather get, like, look, if you don't like it, if you don't like this podcast, okay, well, don't listen then. But also, if you don't like it and you have specific reasons, like things you think that could be improved, I appreciate that. Please do leave a review, send an email. Like, tell me, how am I supposed to get better if I don't have, feedback? Sorry, I'm doing this on video also for Patreon, and my hair was getting in my face. I had to readjust. So I'm not going to go through and edit everything out of this, but I am going to try and talk further away from the microphone. And then there is a filter that I can put on before I export this that helps get rid of some of the like stronger like S sounds, because I know that I can even hear my like strong S's sometimes. So, and I just had to sniffle, so I turned my head away from the microphone. That's what I'm going to try and do. There's no way in my frigid, cold house, I'm ever going to be able to get through an episode without sniffling or coughing. But I will try to move away from the microphone, because that is fucking rude. So I appreciate this anonymous person who's anonymous because they're scared, for bringing that to my attention, because you're right. I probably don't notice all the, like, when I take a drink of something. Anyways, enough time spent talking about this, but you get what I'm saying. And I will do my best. And if it's really annoying still, then I apologize to this person. I wish that it wasn't, but I really appreciate your feedback. Okay. Now I'm gonna overthink the fuck out of this while I'm recording. I can already tell. So today, like I said, today I really wanted to spend all of today working on finishing the episode for that is tomorrow, which is the Susan Powell episode. And there's just so much information out there on this case. I'd never heard of it. So, but I believe a lot of people have. So I want to make sure that I don't get anything wrong or incorrect or leave anything out, because I feel like I'll have a lot of comments about that. Sorry, I had to step away from the microphone to take a sip of water. And I want to do this one with Mark, but I still am not even done writing it. So I wanted a really short episode for today. I wanted like a real mini murder, and I found one. So I thought there was like there was so little information online that I was like, how am I even going to do this? Then I found someone who has a crime blog, and in the comments, she did a blog on this, and in the comments of that blog, it's like, I'm going to share some with you so you'll understand what I mean. But it's like it turns it into like a whole additional story. There's a whole story living in the comments of this blog. And then I generally try not to listen to other podcasts or watch YouTubes about the stories that I haven't told yet, that like I'm researching, because I don't want it to unintentionally influence how I tell the story or the opinions of that person. You know what I mean? I'd rather get all the information from news clips, articles, things like that. But sometimes there isn't enough information, and this was one of those cases. I didn't think there would be enough to even tell this story. So I did find one YouTube, and I want to give the YouTuber credit, because she doesn't, I have no subscribers on YouTube, but she doesn't have that many. So I'm guessing maybe she's still growing. The YouTube is Felony Spectator, and it looks like she's a true crime person. She has a very professional setup and looks great. She has one of those pop things over her mic, like a pop filter. Oops, sorry, I just hit the microphone. So she probably doesn't get any mouth sounds. So maybe I should try that. Anyways, so I watched her YouTube and got a ton more information. Now, this is just one YouTube, so it's not like I like deeply vetted this information. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm sure no one actually cares that much, except for perhaps people related to this case. If they happen to hear this, they want to make sure that correct information is going out. So the information I found on her YouTube, I took it at face value. I'm not a journalist. I know that's not ideal, but there we are. I've said it. I had some things I wanted to talk about, but now I'm like pressed for time, so I'm not going to. I'm going to wait, and I'll talk about them in tomorrow's intro. We're just going to jump right into this story. So this is the story of the Barron family in Eastern Texas. They were from lived in Tyler, Texas, which is, I guess, in East Texas. I don't have a sense of place for you on that. But this is a Christmas story, not a cheerful Christmas story, but a Christmas story. It takes place in 1999, and it was Christmas morning in 1999 when the lives of Stephen and Carla Barron were cut brutally short. So, who are Carla and Stephen Barron? Carla was born March 24th, 1956 in Smith County, Texas, and was 43 years old at the time of our story. Stephen Barron, her husband, was born January 2nd, 1955, also in Texas, was 44 years old. They were married for almost 20 years at the time of our story, and they had a daughter, Stephanie, who was born in 1982. It was the family, they were well respected in town, nice family, church going, lived in a quiet neighborhood. They lived in a double wide trailer. Steve Barron was in the construction business, and I wasn't able to find if Carla Barron worked, if she had ever worked, but at the time of our story, she did not work, because the year prior, she had been diagnosed with cancer. She had a brain tumor. They were able to perform surgery and remove the tumor, but unfortunately she was left with some complications after the surgery. And the best way that I saw them described was kind of stroke-like complications. So she had mobility issues. And it was tough because Steve traveled a lot, apparently, for his, I don't know, construction business is so vague, but that's all I know. And that made it difficult. But luckily, Carla's parents lived right next door. They actually lived on the same property, it looked like. And more accurately, I probably want to say that Carla and Steve lived on her parents' property because her parents had a home, like a brick home. It was pretty nice looking, actually. And Carla and Steve had a double wide trailer, which actually looked not terrible, but the home obviously seems like the more permanent domicile on the property. So at the time of our story in 1999, Stephanie was 17 years old. Her whole life she was described as very attractive, very friendly. She was very bright, a high achieving student. Until very recently, in the year leading up to when this takes place, Christmas morning, 1999, in the months and maybe up to a year leading up to this time, she kind of developed a darker side, so to speak. I did initially read that she had dropped out of high school, and I was also reading that she had started hanging out with a kind of a tougher crowd and getting involved in drinking and drugs and just making bad choices. And dropping out of high school, someone who was very smart, had always gotten A's and B's, was, honor roll student. Those two things seemed connected to me. The hang out with a bad crowd, dropping out of high school. Turns out I didn't find this out until much, much, much later in my research, but it turns out that her dad had actually asked her to just drop out of school, get her GED so that she could stay home and help out with her mom since he was traveling so much. And, my initial thought is stop traveling so much. Like ask to be put in a different position at work or something. But I realize that's a very privileged thing to say. Like not everybody has that option. So Stephanie had also been dating a boy and according to some was very much in love with him. Her parents very much disapproved of him. And this upset Stephanie a lot. She had always been a pretty mild-mannered, rule following, not disrupting things at home type of daughter and teenager and student, again, until recently. So she was already kind of acting out, and then them disapproving of this boyfriend really kind of amped that up. Stephen and Carla, they explained to Stephanie that this not wanting her to see this boy and kind of they were trying to be more strict. They were grounding her and whatnot. It was because they cared about her. They wanted her to be okay. They didn't want her to get into trouble. But, as I can remember being 17 vaguely, that gets lost on the ears, falls on deaf ears when you're a teenager. At least for me, I was a super huge pain in the ass. I was an asshole teenager. I owe my parents so many apologies because but I didn't know it. I didn't realize it at the time. I thought my life was so incredibly difficult and I was filled with angst and worried about so many things. And I wish so much I could go back and shake myself and be like, your life is fucking beautiful right now. You are so lucky. Stop being depressed and sad and complaining and you have no idea how good you have it. And I did. I really did. But I don't know. Teenagers, the mind of a teenager. To me, it reminds me I can't totally. I'm old, as I say all the time, so I can't totally remember what it was like being 17. But I do remember I had a very hard time as a teenager, all due to myself. Do you like how I just turned this murder story, made it about me? I promise I'm going back to the story in a second. But my life wasn't bad. I had a really hard time with my emotions, and that's, hormones to the best of my understanding. And so the way I felt as like a 17-year-old, or really as like a 13 to 19-year-old for those years, it reminds me of how I feel like the week before I get my period. Sorry for the men who are listening, but I know nobody likes to talk about periods. I'm not going to talk about it any more than I already am. But I get very emotional. Mark and I were watching that new show on Netflix, No Good Deed, yesterday. It's not a sad show. I cried. Like, I'm emotional. I get super irritated, super, this is nothing. I don't need to explain like PMS and being emotional to anybody who's listening. But that feeling like where I kind of cannot rein my emotions in, like they're running away from me and I know it and I can feel it. I know that I'm being unreasonable or I know I'm being overly emotional, but I can't stop it. That feeling only happens occasionally and happens occasionally before I get my period, but it reminds me of being a teenager. Why did I need to share all of that? I didn't. So, on Christmas morning in 1999 at 4:20 a.m., Margaret, who is Carla's mom and Stephanie's grandmother who lived on that same property, called the police to report that an intruder had been in her granddaughter's home next door. She told the police, my granddaughter ran over here and she claimed to have heard 4 gunshots in her parents' bedroom. So Stephanie had told her grandmother that she heard 4 gunshots and that she hid in her closet with the phone, a landline, because she was going to call 911, I can only assume. But Stephanie said the phone didn't work. And so she was hiding in her closet. She was terrified, and she heard someone walk into her bedroom while she was hiding. And then she heard them walk out. So once she heard them leave her bedroom and she thought they had already left the house and she thought it was safe, she ran out the back door of the trailer. She said that she saw a shadowy figure standing out there, and it scared her so much that she just ran as fast as she could, barefoot, across it was a big property that both of these houses were on, and it was winter. So she's barefoot, runs across the property to her grandparents' home. Shared this with all of this with her grandmother. Her grandmother called 911, and that's where we are. So when police arrived, they entered through the back door, which was ajar, likely from Stephanie running out. Right when they walked into the house, they noticed there was no Christmas tree, no presents, no decorations, and it's Christmas morning, so that was strange. I thought there was something like suspenseful to leave there. I'll tell you, there really isn't, because later on I found out that they are actually Jehovah's Witnesses, so they don't celebrate Christmas, hence no Christmas decorations. The police obviously didn't know this at the time, so they're just noting all the things as they're walking into this potential crime scene. They don't know what has happened yet. They noticed an empty leather holster and a box of Remington bullets, but they didn't find any gun. And when they went into the master bedroom, they didn't find any gun near this leather holster, box of bullets. And then they made their way into the master bedroom, which is when they discovered the dead bodies of Carla and Stephen Barron, Stephanie's parents. They also discovered 2 little dogs that were there barking. And of course, this broke my heart. Carla had been shot below her left eye, and one of the dogs, a Scottish Terrier, was still lying underneath her arm. But the dogs were very much alive, thank goodness, lying underneath her arm. And the other dog, a Chihuahua, was apparently sitting right by her head on the pillow. And also both of them refused to move initially when the cops came in. Stephen was found on the floor next to the bed. He was almost kind of leaned up against the bed. He had one arm draped on the bed. So based on just literally walking in and they're taking all this in, they initially thought maybe it was a murder-suicide. But then they noticed that Stephen had actually been shot in the back of the head. It appeared that the window had also been shot out, and a rogue bullet was lodged in the headboard. So just upon initial glances, it seemed that Stephanie saying that she thought she heard 4 gunshots, that seemed to match. Upon further investigation, under the bed, police found a .25 caliber pistol and a 9mm Beretta and a pouch that had bullets, had 4 rounds in it. I don't know if I wrote that down wrong or right, but it had bullets in it. So they then thought, okay, well, perhaps it's more likely that Stephen may have been trying to get his gun or one of his guns from under the bed when he was killed, and that's why he's in that position that he is. They also found another gun in his truck, and his wallet was also in his truck, both in the console of his truck. Inside of his wallet, he had about $225 in cash, which it's a lot of cash. He also had a concealed carry license, so all of these guns were legally owned. They found, sorry for that mouth. Now I know that I used to, when people leave comments, sorry guys, when people leave comments and point something out, I've realized about myself that then I will also point that out for a period of time until it fades from my memory. So now I'm going to try not to do that though, because I don't need to point out my mouth sounds more than you already notice them. And now I'm sure everyone's going to notice them and be like, great. So scratch that. And also sorry for the mouth sound. So Carol, they found Carol's wallet. She had about $150 cash in her wallet. Both of them, all the credit cards. It didn't appear that anything was missing from their wallets. And as they continued to investigate the entire scene and the evidence or lack of evidence, they weren't sure the story it was telling was matching up with Stephanie's story. One of the investigators on the case, who actually ended up writing a book about this. There was no Kindle edition though, so I didn't get it. He said there's no sign of any break-in, no theft, and no apparent motive for this slaying. There was a new computer, TVs, cash, everything was there. So it didn't appear, at least, that anything had been stolen. The front door was still locked when police arrived, and the back door, yes, it was ajar, but Stephanie had said she ran out the back door, so that made sense. And there was no sign of a break-in. Nothing was broken. Everything looked intact. In fact, everything looked not only intact, but almost untouched, except for there was an electrical box outside the home that looked like it had been tampered with. It looked like someone had tried to cut the wires of of a small telephone line, but with pliers perhaps, but they never ended up cutting it. It just looked like they had tried to. Police then investigated and, Stephanie's room, went through her entire room, went through the whole house, obviously, but went through her room, and they discovered what they believed to be a recently fired, because it smelled like it had recently been fired, .38 caliber blue steel 5-shot revolver with a wood grip. Very specific. And they believed that this was the murder weapon. So they found this inside the pocket of a sweatshirt of Stephanie's, inside, and the sweatshirt was inside her laundry hamper in her room. And that revolver had 4 shots missing. So there's only 1 shot remaining in there, which fit the story that this could be the murder weapon. Also in the pocket of that sweatshirt where they found the revolver was a small piece of latex that they believed came from latex gloves. There was a dark smudge on it that looked like it might be blood. They also found a bloody t-shirt in her closet, and it looked like it had blood spatter on it. And they found a laser that you can attach to a firearm for, better aim. And that was in the pocket of a pair of pants in her closet. Other than those things, which are pretty big things, her room looked like a normal teenager's room. Lots of pictures of her and her friends. It was pretty messy. There was clothes all over the floor, clothes all over the closet. The police noted all the pictures of her with her friends. In a lot of the pictures, the ones that had male friends, the males were often throwing up gang signs. And then she also had something on her wall like a heart, and inside the heart it was written, I love, and I'm not going to know how to pronounce this guy's name, but Denario, I think it's Denario. They didn't know who Denario was, but they were noting that they needed to find out. Now, they also noted that, yes, though Stephanie said she ran out the back door, that made sense. It was ajar when they arrived, so that made sense. But what didn't make sense is that her room was actually directly next to the front door. And now a double wide trailer, I can only assume it's not huge. I mean, we're not talking about a mansion here, but her room was directly next to the front door. So it would make more sense for her to leave her room, and if she thinks, or she said there was an intruder in the house, whether he's still there or not, you're not going to run through the whole house. What if he's still there? She didn't know for sure that he or she wasn't still there. So why did she run through the whole house to go out the back door? Weird. So all of these kind of things, finding this gun in her laundry hamper, why she ran out the back door, not the front door. Police are starting to feel like this is inconsistent. Her story is inconsistent with this scene. So they asked her to come to the station to give a more formal statement. They did read her rights, but they said, you're not a suspect. They asked her about Denario. She said that he had been her boyfriend. They recently broke up. He broke up with her. She said that she somehow pissed him off, but she didn't know how. And she was hoping that they would get back together and get married because they still loved each other. But they really hadn't been dating for that long, I believe. So Denario was the boyfriend that her parents did not like. The police asked her about her relationship with her parents. She said, my dad's really strict, but we get along pretty well. I love my parents very much. She explained that recently her dad was pretty mad at her because she had written a fraudulent check and she had been caught for that. And a little bit more on that later. So detectives asked her to take them through her night on Christmas Eve. And she said that she worked a shift at the donut shop. She worked at a donut shop. She had recently been hired. And after she left work at the donut shop, she went to the bank so that she could cash her paycheck because she had to give her parents money for her car insurance and for a lawyer for her check fraud because apparently she was technically out on bond. So when I said a little bit more about the fraudulent check stuff, that's right now. That's this stuff that she was getting a lawyer. She was out on bond, and she had to check in with her bond bail person. Then she went to the mall by herself, and then she went home. And when she got home, she gave her dad her keys because she was grounded. That was their deal. Once she got home at the end of the night, she wasn't allowed to leave again. She went into her room. Her parents ate their dinner in the living room, and she ate her dinner in her bedroom, watched a movie, and fell asleep around 10:30. Detective asked her, why did you go out the back door, not the front door, if the front door was right there? And she said, because the back door was already open. I don't know if she means unlocked or like actually open, like the intruder had left through the back door. I don't know. They also asked her about her closet. She was like, what about my closet? And they said, well, you said you were hiding in your closet, but your closet door was off the tracks. So how were you hiding in there? And so what I took that to understand is that the closet door was off the tracks, like I just said, but that maybe it wasn't only off the I can't explain this without you being able to see all my hand motions, but you know the closets, I don't need to explain this. You understand what I'm saying. The closet door was off the tracks, meaning it wouldn't close properly, and she couldn't possibly be hiding in there if it wouldn't close. But her response to this was she just seemed confused. She was like, what? I don't remember it being off the tracks. I don't know what you're talking about at all. Again, this just wasn't really adding up for police. And despite not having a ton of evidence, they arrested her and charged her with 2 counts of first-degree murder, and the judge denied her bail. It feels like a big leap in how I'm telling this, and it felt like a big leap in researching this. Like, honestly, it was an even bigger leap before I watched this this YouTube, because it was basically just like they arrested her. And they arrested her. This happened the morning of the 25th. Different accounts. It was within a day or two. I saw some accounts that said they arrested her that night of Christmas. Some that said they didn't arrest her till the 27th. It was quick that they arrested her. And while she was awaiting trial, police continued investigating and talked to friends and family. Family members and friends that the detective spoke to said that Carla, Stephanie's mom, had been really, really worried about her because of the rough crowd she was hanging out with. Friends and family members said that either they knew firsthand or that Carla and Steve had told them that Stephanie was easily influenced. She was kind of a follower, and that made her parents even more concerned, because she was very easily being convinced, as far as they thought, to drink and do drugs, and that she was acting promiscuously. A neighbor that the police spoke to said that they had recently seen her outside practicing her shooting at, I'm assuming, cans or something. It looks like their property was pretty big. It was a fairly rural area, so that kind of makes sense. Police did find Denario and talked to him. They asked him where he was that, Christmas Eve night leading into Christmas morning. He says he was he was at his friend's apartment for 2 to 3 hours, and the friend took him home and he went to bed. He explained that he had broken up with Stephanie about 3 weeks prior to this murder of her parents. He said that he started dating somebody new, and Stephanie had actually called his new girlfriend and said, "If you don't leave Denario alone, I'm going to shoot you." And this was something that several people actually said about Stephanie, that she had recently come into possession of a gun. Not sure how, that was unclear. But several friends, acquaintances, people who knew her said that when she got mad or frustrated with something lately, she would just say, "Oh, I'm just going to shoot this person. I'm going to kill this person." So that doesn't look great for her. Police also learned something else about Denario. They learned that he was linked to a recent house fire that had happened in October of 1999. So just, 2 months earlier. And what happened in October was that around 2 a.m., a woman named Shelly Ray Haynes called 911 after her smoke detector woke her up. By the time she hung up with 911, the fire was too big. It was too hard for her to escape. It was, wherever her room where she was engulfed. Fire crews did arrive and noticed that the fire had not only taken her, completely consumed her home, but it had consumed a home next to hers. There luckily was nobody home at the home next to hers. There's nobody there. Fire crews rescued her, Shelly, and her 2.5-year-old daughter, Hannah. They apparently were both still alive but unconscious. But after getting to the hospital, they never woke back up. They did not survive. So they were both killed in this house fire. The fire was actually started next door, in the house next door, a woman named Beth Little's home. No one was there, but the fire started there and spread to Shelly Ray's home. And how this all was connected was that the gun that was used to kill Carla and Stephen Barron, the main people in our story, it had actually been stolen from that house that was set on fire next to Shelly's house. And the fire had been set intentionally to cover up the burglary in which the gun was stolen. And Denario supposedly had something to do with all of this. And how they kind of linked this all up is that in January of 2000, so just a couple weeks after this murder, police got a call from someone, said he had information about the Barron murders, and he wanted to share some info if the police could help him out with some legal trouble that he was having. He remained anonymous. And they asked him he called the police and asked them to pick him up from a gas station, which apparently they did. And this informant said that Stephanie had been at his girlfriend's house the day before the murders. And he said, I want to share what I know. They agreed to tell the DA that he had helped out, etc. So he said Denario Jones is the one who stole the gun from the house fire situation that had happened a few months earlier. And this informant knew that because Denario and Stephanie hung out with this informant and his girlfriend a lot. And this informant knew some things about the fire and the gun that would be that were never released to the public. So the only way he could have known those things was from Denario or from whoever was involved, which he's saying is Denario. And there was a bunch of different little things. When police were asking this informant about had you been with Denario when he stole the gun and the night of the fire? And the informant said, yes, I saw Denario that night, and after he stole the gun, set the fire and left, he then got on his bicycle and rode back to the fire to watch fire crews putting it out, which was true because there were witnesses that saw him there. The informant said that Denario, he was a career criminal. He was known for being a thief. He burglarized, he stole things, and then he would go to Dallas or other parts of Texas to sell these things that he stole, and that's how he made a living. The informant said that he always had a 9mm gun on him. The informant also said that Stephanie talked about killing her parents a lot. Almost all the time that she talked about them and killing them, it was that she was going to shoot them. But that one time she also mentioned filling their bed with scorpions. What? That's awful. The informant said that Stephanie's dad didn't like Denario because he was black, and that Stephanie always talked about how her dad was pretty abusive. There was no signs that Stephanie's dad was abusive. So this is unconfirmed. And I always find this to be a tricky one because if it's not confirmed abuse, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It also doesn't mean that it did happen. So I don't want to say that this man was abusing her when he wasn't. And I don't want to say that she's lying and that she wasn't abused if she was. So, it's who knows. So they brought Denario back in for questioning. He'd already been in before. And this just struck me as ridiculous and so stupid. And they said, okay, before we go in and talk to you, do you have any weapons on you? And he said, no, absolutely not. Okay. And then they patted him down. And of course they found a 9mm in his waistband, which, are you dense? Do you think that police are going to bring you in for questioning, ask you if you have any weapons on you, and they're just going to take you at your word at face value? No, I don't. Okay, come on, sit down with us. Come on. You had to know you were going to be patted down. Not that it makes a huge difference one way or the other, but why wouldn't you just say, yeah, I have a gun? They spoke to him again. He does eventually, they shared what this informant told them. He confesses to stealing the gun from Beth Little's house and setting the house on fire. He said he didn't mean for anyone to die. He set her house on fire because no one was home, and he was afraid that he forgot to wear gloves and that he left fingerprints. And so he didn't want to get caught. So he thought the best way to get rid of all of his fingerprints, instead of just going back there, she was out of town for the holidays. That's why he robbed it in the first place. So he knew no one was coming home that night. And instead of just going back and going back with gloves and taking the time to wipe everything down that you may have touched, he just set the place on fire. And so in November of 2000, he was convicted of setting the fire, of arson and some type of murder, and sentenced to 70 years in prison. Stephanie Sorry, hold on one second. I have a little bit mixed up here. Oh, okay. So Stephanie was awaiting trial. Again, some people believe that Denario was involved. He stole that gun. So it makes sense that people thought he might be involved in the murder of Stephanie's parents, but there was absolutely nothing to prove that he was there. All the fingerprints that they took from the scene, from the gun, from everything were inconclusive. And whoever shot the gun likely wore latex. That's why they found that little piece of latex. They couldn't get any DNA, fingerprints, nothing from that small piece of latex either. It turned out that the blood on Stephanie's shirt, so all this is happening while Stephanie's still, detained and awaiting trial. The blood on her shirt turned out to be her own blood. Now, initially she said that she got in a fight with somebody. That's why there's blood on her shirt. And then that later changed to be that she had a nosebleed. Doesn't really matter. Police initially thought it would be her parents' blood, but it wasn't. So that kind of was neither here nor there. They did test her hands for gun residue the next morning after, so the 26th, I believe, and they got the results from that back. There was no gun residue on her hands. Police interviewed her cellmate while she was awaiting trial, and like the cellmate that she was either still with or had been with. Nothing happens quickly. So she was living in jail for a while before her trial was going to come up. Cellmate said that Stephanie never admitted to any murder openly, but that she was very nervous about the test results about her clothes and the gun residue and fingerprints. Cellmate also said she never showed any sadness or remorse. She only cried once, and that's when she thought she might not get the inheritance money, like her parents' life insurance, which if you're in prison, you're not getting. Duh. Now, Stephanie did write a letter during this time, and she was never able to send the letter because guards came and busted in to do a cell check, and she allegedly shoved that letter in her bra to hide it. Well, when police found the letter, she said it was planted. Somebody planted it there, and that it wasn't her, which makes no sense. Handwriting. I mean, and there may be more details to that. Again, aside from this YouTube, there's such little information on this case that I've never actually tried to tell a story with such little information. There's almost no news articles about this, which I don't understand. But so the letter had a confession in it. In the letter, she's writing to Denario, I believe, this letter, and she's telling him what actually happened. And she says she was pacing around in her house. She was upset with her parents because, she was grounded. They didn't let her see Denario, didn't let her do any of the things she wanted to do. And so she's pacing around, and she just keeps hearing Denario's voice in her head saying, "Do it, do it, do it." And she said, and at 4:08, I went into my parents' room. I pointed the laser shooter at the back of my dad's head while he was sleeping, and I shot him. And then my mom sat up in bed, and I shot her in the face. Then the laser fell off the gun, and I shot at my dad again because he was still moving, but I missed. And then I shot a fourth time and also missed, or maybe nicked her mom in the arm. And then she said she got so scared, she ran to her bedroom. She tried to cut the phone wire so it would look like, she couldn't call for help. And that's about what the letter says. And these details are, obviously the letter was more detailed than what I just said. I don't have the actual letter. I haven't seen it. I'm retelling it from someone else retelling it. But the details, the 4 shots, where the mom was shot, where the dad was shot, Carla and Stephen, sorry, should have used their names, it was accurate. And there was, and where the gun was found or hidden, all accurate. And these are all details that no one would know unless you were there and you were the shooter. So this was not good for Stephanie. And then ballistics confirmed that the gun in her hamper was the gun used in the murder and also was the gun that was stolen from Beth Little's house. So that was all, yes, that was true. Her lawyers apparently at this point said, you need to plead guilty and avoid trial. Like, this is not good for you. And she was sentenced to 70 years with a stipulation that she must serve 30 years before she's allowed to apply for parole. So that means that she will be eligible for parole in 2029, so about 4 years from now. What is the biggest mystery of this case? I mean, there's a lot of mystery if you ask me, but the motive, the most obvious motive, which may be the truth, is that she was a teenager and an angsty teenager who was acting out and wanted to date who she wanted to date and wanted to have the freedom that she wanted, and her parents wouldn't let her. One of the detectives said, this is a direct quote, "What's fascinating is the mind of these criminals, or the lack thereof, because they just don't think like common people. Psychopaths very seldom do. They make excuses for what they want. In her case, she saw something she wanted, the insurance money, and her boyfriend, and her parents were the only things standing in her way." So what I did read that some people speculated was that she couldn't just run away with Denario or with whoever she wanted because she didn't have any money. But if she killed her parents, then she would get their life insurance and then she could run away. It's like seems pretty extreme. I was a real asshole of a teenager, and killing my parents never once entered my mind, like ever. It just seems crazy because it is. So in addition to the detectives who weighed in their opinions about motive, an East Texas professional counselor, Dr. Wade French, who spent many years studying the minds of criminals, said, quote, "The parents are seen as an obstacle to the daughter being able to maintain a relationship with a male that she desires to have in her life." And Dr. French said from that desire, and he's talking in general, he's not just talking about Stephanie, but he's relating this to Stephanie. He says that that from that desire, they formulate a plan that usually doesn't include running away together because they typically don't have any money or anywhere to go. And they believe that what they want justifies what they do. And he said, quote, "Desperate people do very desperate things." Which feels like an obvious statement, but I still like it. And, Smith, the detective, offered an opportunity to use this as a warning to other parents that to stay involved, to know what your kids are doing, know who their friends are, know what they're doing on the internet and in chat rooms, and get involved. He says, get involved and stay involved. If you don't pay attention to that, you're going to be paying in other ways, which I feel like, yeah, good. It's always a good reminder, and I don't have kids, so fuck me. What do I know? Who cares what I think about it? But I would assume that most parents do their best to know what their kids are doing, who their friends are, what they're looking at online. Like, I mean, I know there's absentee parents, and maybe that's naive of me, but I feel like, well, or maybe it's just the world that I grew up in. Parents were involved. They gave a shit. And you know what? As a teacher, that wasn't always the case. I had plenty of students whose parents either did not give a shit or did not have time to give a shit because they were working 3 jobs. So I actually have nothing else to say about that because I'm not a parent, and it seems like my opinion is irrelevant. So now she is still in prison. Her story has certainly changed in prison. She now is sticking to that she is innocent. She has, over the years, looked for love, looked for connections to people. She joined a prisoner dating service, which is, to me, a sad reminder of the fact that humans are, even if you're an introvert, even if you're not a people person, so to speak, humans are people. Humans need companionship. Even in terrible, terrible circumstances like being in prison. And in 2005, she found companionship in a man named Stephen Roloff, I assumed that they met maybe on the prisoner dating service or, through some type of letter correspondence. But it turned out, which they did, but it turned out that he actually worked as a manager at a car dealership at the mall and met her. He had met Stephanie prior to her even meeting Denario. So, I mean, this is way before she or someone murdered her parents. She was working at a fitness center and he had come into the fitness place. They talked, they got to know each other a little bit. And it, that was it. She started dating Denario. It never went anywhere. He's like double her age. But then after she was convicted, he saw her on TV and he wrote her a letter. Apparently they connected, wrote letters, and then were married. She told her new husband, Stephen, which is confusing because her dad's name was also Stephen, that she was innocent, that Denario did it, and she has letters proving it. Because her and Denario did write letters back and forth, I guess, from prison. He was in prison, she was in prison. And Stephen actually gave these letters to the police. Turns out nothing really came of it because the letters were just too vague. There was nothing in the letters that specifically proved or concretely said that, Denario admitting it. Nothing. You could glean from the letters that maybe he did, but still. Now, so I don't know. I don't know. I was going to say, did she do it? I don't know. I do think that the fact that the gun was in her, hamper, her closet door was off. Was she really high? I agree. Signs point to her or point to Denario. And I don't know. I guess we won't know. But so I found this. It's a TypePad account, and it's laurajames.typepad.com. So it's called Clues, CLEEWS. Your home for historic true crime. So I don't know. She's I don't know exactly what this is, but she posts about true crime and posted on the sad story of Stephanie Barron. Very short post, just a little bit of details. Not much. At the end of her post, it says, Miss Barron has placed her profile on womeninwaiting.com. And I guess it's people you can write to. I don't know. I didn't click on it, to tell you the truth, actually. So the post is so short. There's really not any information in here the information that she has here on this post, it's 4-ish paragraphs. It's the exact information that I was able to find online as well before watching the YouTube. There's not much. There's really not much. And is it because she was 17 at the time? I don't know. If anybody has any ideas as to why there would be we're talking maybe 3 news articles, very little. So I started going through the comments just to see. There's a lot of comments. And these comments are start in 2006. And the second comment on here caught my eye. And it says, I went to school with Stephanie. My mother and her mother were close friends. Carla, Steph's mom, had to repeatedly call my mother to go help her get Steph. Almost every weekend this happened. Stephanie couldn't go to her boyfriend's house for Christmas, and that made her mad. She had told her parents many times that she was going to kill them. I remember her coming to school and saying that she was going to kill her parents before the day was over. Repeatedly, she said it. She did it in cold blood. It broke my mother's heart to have to pretty up her best friend for the funeral, and it made me furious. Now, Stephanie wasn't in school at the time of the murder, not only because, she had dropped out, but even if she hadn't, it was Christmas. No one was in school. So, to say that she said she came to school and was going to kill her parents before the day was over. Now, maybe this girl is not talking about Christmas 1999. Maybe Stephanie said that on a different occasion, but immediately I was kind of like, okay, well, maybe. And what do you mean? Your mom had to pretty up her best friend for the funeral? Did your mom work at the funeral home? I don't know. Unclear. Okay. And then a little bit more, nothing, I don't know, 5 or 6 more. Nothing too interesting. And then this. This is a comment. I am married to Stephanie Barron, and I can assure you that she did not kill her parents. The fact is, her boyfriend at the time, a young African-American man that was a gang member at the time of the murders, shot and killed Stephanie's parents. In fact, the gun mentioned in the book, The Christmas Day Murders, that was identified as the gun used to commit the murders was traced back to a robbery and murder of a 2-year-old and her mother. Denario Jones, the boyfriend, is serving 110 years at the Telford unit in New Boston, Texas, for these murders as well as the robbery of the gun. Stephanie is an amazing, beautiful, kind, precious young woman who deals with the unbearable pain of losing her parents every day of her life. She sits in a prison serving 75 years for a crime in which she was really the victim. I've known Stephanie for many years and married her 2 years ago while she was incarcerated. We continue to fight for her release and believe eventually justice will show her face in this case. Anyone with any knowledge of Stephanie's case knows that she is innocent, and it is a shame that the powers that be in Tyler, Texas aren't as concerned about justice as they are about their political futures. Regards, Steve Roloff. And sorry guys, I'm just reading this directly. So then the next comment says, another fact in Stephanie's confession that was kept from the media was the fact that Stephanie's step-grandfather was once a Smith County judge. He was arrested, convicted, kicked off the bench, and sent to federal prison for money laundering and fraud a couple years before the murder of Stephanie's parents. His name is Kenneth Ray Barron. Mr. Barron had lost his license to practice law during these convictions. When he was released from prison, he was bankrupt. During the investigation, he pushed and persuaded Stephanie to take a guilty plea for the sake of the family. He was relentless in his persuasion. He told Stephanie if she would take the plea, he would support her, stand by her, and do whatever he could to help her, if only she would save the pain of trial from her family. Stephanie pled guilty, and Mr. Barron collected over $350,000 in life insurance benefits that otherwise would have gone to Stephanie. After the will went to probate and Stephanie signed over her rights and Mr. Barron collected his blood money, he never again contacted or had anything to do with Stephanie again. He wanted Stephanie to plead guilty, used his influence as her grandfather to manipulate a 17-year-old teenager so he could get the money and run. There are so many facts in this case that people don't know, and yet they talk as if they do and convict Stephanie on hearsay and half-truths. Stephanie is guilty of using very poor judgment, and she is guilty of being a rebellious teenager, but she isn't a murderer. If anyone cares, she has worked very hard since her incarceration to better herself. She has maintained a 4.0 GPA in college. She has become a positive influence for my children and many teenagers that could have been lost as well if not for her story and advice to them. She is also an amazing wife to me, even though we are separated by the walls of that prison. Stephanie Barron Roloff has been through hell and back, and yet she still is never bitter or resentful towards the ones that put her there. I can tell you I'm a much better person from having known Stephanie. And then another comment. These are all like a few days within each other. He's responding to that schoolmate one that I read. And he says, to the schoolmate of Stephanie Barron, I spoke to Stephanie regarding the supposed schoolmate of hers that claimed her mother was responsible for, as she put it, dolling Carla up for her funeral, and how Stephanie was at school saying she was going to kill her mother and father before the day was over. Both of her comments were lies. First of all, Stephanie was no longer in school and hadn't been in school for several months. Secondly, Miss Flowers' mother was far from Carla's best friend. Oh, that's the one who left the comment. She did Stephanie and her mother's nails. The fact is, this girl's mother wasn't even in attendance at Stephen and Carla's funeral. It's people like this girl that are looking for attention and making up lies that create untruths that surround Stephanie's whole case. Blah, blah, blah. And then he's basically just saying, like, family suffered enough, blah, blah, blah. And then we have somebody who posts a comment who going by the name Edward that immediately posts a comment, 10 days after that one by Stephanie's husband. He says, and he has very bad grammar in English, but I'm going to read it exactly. I want to say to everybody that Stephanie Barron did not kill her parents. She sends me letters and I sent her letter too. I don't want that anybody say anything about Stephanie Barron. I love her and she loves me too. She writes me love letters because she is very sweet and she told me that she did not kill her parents and I believe. And then husband Steve responds. This is another example of someone looking for attention from our family's tragedy. Do you see how Steve he's like our family's tragedy? Please. He says, this Edward freak is a liar. Stephanie never wrote this idiot any love letters. Get a life, dude. Then Steve says again, I told Stephanie about the post from Edward, and she thought it was funny that some guy she has never met, never written, and knows absolutely nothing about would post, in the worst grammar possible, a comment regarding her. People love attention and will seek it out regardless of what lies they have to tell. Edward, or whatever your name is, find someone other than my wife to stick up for. Then Edward responds, listen, Mr. Nothing, I'm not trying to get any attention of anybody, okay? Maybe you were trying to get attention because Stephanie told me that you are not her husband. Stop right stupid thing, you, and whoever want to take advantage about Stephanie's case. And I feel like I can't read all of this, but this goes on and on and on. So Stephen then responds and says, to whom it may concern, I am Stephanie's husband and would be glad to answer any questions regarding her case. I visit her every weekend in Gatesville, and we have retained an attorney in search of a time cut in her case. Stephanie is coming up on 10 years flat, and she has almost completed her college degree. She is active in her church activities there in prison, and she has worked very hard to rebuild her life after this terrible tragedy. I sometimes receive letters from Denario Jones, the real killer of Stephanie's parents. He's cruel and crude in his letters. I used to write him back in an attempt to convince him to come clean with his guilt in killing my mother and father-in-law, which, I mean, sweet, but this guy never even met them, and they're no longer alive. I know there are people like this Edward guy, if that's even his name, like the other commenter, that enjoy playing games and making a big joke out of these murders. People need to understand a family has been destroyed. Mom and dad are dead. And what was once their little daughter sits inside a Texas prison doing 75 years for a crime she didn't commit. There are people like me that love Stephanie very dearly. There's her 84-year-old grandmother that lost her daughter and now her granddaughter. I visited Stephen and Carla's grave recently and couldn't help but cry as I stood over their tombstone. It reads, together in life, together forever. Ugh, that makes me almost cry. And he goes on and on about reading all of her files, reading all the, everything out there. Then he says, if you have any questions regarding Stephanie or her case or just want to inquire about how she is doing, please feel free to contact me at steveroloff7@aol.com. And I saw that and I immediately emailed him. And then, he continues on and on and on. And then his PS says, could someone recommend an English tutor for poor old Edward? He has the toughest time putting a whole sentence together. Bless his heart. And then Edward writes back, listen, Mr. Steve, or whatever name is, I'm not trying to play games with this case. I just want to let the people know you are a liar. And basically this goes back and forth. Edward and Steve in the comments. Back and forth. Be real, Steve. Do you want me to send you the letter that Stephanie has written me? Edward, yes, please send me the letter that my wife wrote to you. Edward, tell you what, if my wife wrote to you, would you tell me what unit she is in now and the address of that unit? What's her TDCJ number? What's her middle name? A few days later, Edward, what happened, dude? Cat got your tongue? Because Steve is commenting. Edward's not responding. And then this. Sorry, guys. This is a tragic case. 2 people lost their lives, and I'm not making light of that. But this just took me in a totally different direction, which I had to share. So Edward never responds. This is, last time Edward responded was May 18th. Steve writes again on the 18th, comments again on the 18th, on the 19th. And then on May 28th, Steve writes, I visited with Stephanie on Sunday, and she told me the truth about Edward. First off, I owe Edward a huge apology. He was telling the truth. He has been writing Stephanie and she has written him back. Edward, I'm sorry for calling you a liar. I'm afraid, however, Stephanie was using you to get you to send her money. I am very upset at her and disappointed in her choices. She is better than she has shown in this instance. I want Edward to tell me how much money he has sent to her and I will return his money to him. It breaks my heart to think my wife could use someone's emotions to get a few bucks. Stephanie will be writing you a letter telling you the truth and apologizing for her actions. I am embarrassed for her. Again, I know Stephanie and she's much better than this. I am very patient with Stephanie because I understand the environment she exists in. Most all of the women are conning or trying to con someone to get money. It is a way of life inside that prison. Most do it for survival, but for Stephanie, there is no excuse at all because I take good care of her. Edward, you are a good man that was taken advantage of and used for money. You, or anyone else for that matter, doesn't deserve to be treated that way. Again, if you let me know how much money you sent Stephanie, I will see that you get it back. As for the other readers of this blog, I can only say my wife is not perfect and neither am I. I am sad that she chose to use this guy, but we all have done things we are not proud of. I will continue to stand beside my wife and hope that this will be a life-learned lesson for her. Edward, again, I apologize for my hateful remarks to you, and I apologize that Stephanie took advantage of your good heart. Take care, Steve. I read that. I was like, wow. I mean, this all just seems completely ridiculous a little bit because it's just happening in like the comments of this blog. I don't know. It just seems so strange. But that comment, I mean, my own opinions of Steve and like marrying a woman in prison who's half your age and all that. I don't know how I feel about that. But this admitting that he was wrong and just very genuinely and clearly apologizing for his wife, like I was impressed by that. I thought that was great. Edward writes back, forget the money. She is a beautiful girl with a good heart. I hope that she can get out of there very soon. I just wanted to help her, but I'm a little upset with her because she told me that you left her 4 years ago. She could tell me the truth. Anyway, tell her for me when you see her that she's very special and I wish her a good luck. And you, Steve, take care of her. Very good, Edward. Again, it goes on and on. Then Steve writes to Edward, I visited her on Sunday. I'm hurt and disappointed. I don't know if our marriage will survive, etc., etc. Then Edward writes again, Steve, oh, no, I'm sorry. And in this response to Edward, Steve says, I trusted my wife and she has hurt me very deeply with her relationship with you. I feel betrayed. And I am currently going through chemo for colon cancer. In fact, I've been on the hospital since Sunday and was just released. Edward writes back, says, I'm sorry about the cancer, etc., etc. Steve writes back to Edward, thanks for the well wishes. I'm fighting every day. This has been very hard on our marriage. I mean, this is a soap opera in the comments of this. And then, of course, and then other people join in. Oh my God, laughing so hard. This is one of the most entertaining things I've ever read. Other people claiming they've been talking to Stephanie. People making fun of Edward, people making fun of Steve, which is sad. And then somebody says, Steve, you got to get a life. She's married to you for the money, blah, blah, blah. Do you have proof that her grandfather did what you said? Do you have an attorney yet? Can you prove any of this? And I'm not going to go on and on because I'm sure people have signed off by now as I'm just reading comments from a blog. But the ultimate thing is that no, they don't have, Steve doesn't have any concrete evidence because if he had, Stephanie would have been out of prison a long time ago and she's not. Unfortunately, I did go through these comments as long, I mean, they go on for a long time. So Steve asked Stephanie to write a letter to the blog. She did, and that will be the last thing I read to you. But unfortunately, Steve, he died in 2019. Sorry. Which is so sad, the cancer. And then Stephanie filed for divorce. Either also in 2019. So either right before he died, right after. I'm not sure. Do you have to file for divorce if somebody dies? I would imagine no, but I am not sure. So this is a letter, and I'll end this here, but this is from July 2nd, 2007. Steve posted this, and Stephanie wrote this and gave it to Steve to post. To post to the readers of this blog. It says, "Dear readers, my husband told me about this blog and asked me to make a comment in my own defense. There have been a lot of people to comment on here, some claiming to be close friends of my mother, some claiming to have firsthand knowledge of my case, and others just being entertained by my loss. The only thing I want to say is there is nothing the state of Texas, no judge, jury, or prison official that can do anything to me that I haven't already done to myself. I did not kill my parents, but the life I was living, the rebellious attitude I had, and the people I associated myself with did cause their deaths. I have to live with this for the rest of my life. I miss my mom every day, and there isn't anything I would not do to go back in time and change the decisions I made and have my mother here now. I won't spend my time here trying to justify my actions or pleading my innocence. I am guilty of being a brat, and that attitude cost my mom and dad their lives, me my freedom, and my family to be torn apart. I can only hope that if there are some other young teenage girls out there that hear my story, see firsthand how a teenage girl from a good home with good grades and a strong support system could go from all of that to here, and see how important it is to choose your friends wisely, follow your upbringing, and learn from my mistakes. Maybe then they won't have to go through what I've gone through. I don't blame anyone but myself for where I am today. I know there were people that did not tell the truth, and there were those involved that acted for their own best interest. But had I been doing the things my mom raised me to do and been living the way my mom raised me to live, none of this would have ever happened. Today I live inside these gray walls, and I don't have many of the luxuries I enjoyed at home with my folks, but I'm grateful I have family that supports me and stands beside me, a husband that adores me and I adore as well, and the hope to one day make parole and rebuild my life the way my mom and dad raised me to be. Stephanie Barron Roloff." I will include the website in case anyone is fascinated by this. I will put it in the, show notes. And you can check out the comments more if you'd like to. But I'm going to leave it there because there is no real conclusion to this more beyond the fact that Stephanie's in prison. It is believed that she did this. Nobody asked for my opinion, but I could absolutely see that it's Denario who did this. I could also see that it's Stephanie who did it, and in a moment of teenage angst and craziness, and then very much regretted it. I don't know. We don't have those answers, and we don't know. Stephanie's in jail. Denario's in jail. And it's a very tragic, terrible story. So my heart goes out to the families. And so I emailed Steve because I thought, well, maybe I could talk to him. Maybe I could talk to Stephanie, but he has passed, and I doubt that Stephanie's allowed to listen to podcasts, so she won't hear this. But if anyone does have any further information on this, has heard this story, knows something that I may have left out, please feel free to contact me and I can share it on the next episode. It is now 4:00, so I have a lot of work to do in order to get the Susan Powell episode out tomorrow. That is my goal. Maybe very late in the day, but I'm going to aim for that. And yeah, with that, I will bid you adieu. Bid you farewell? I don't know. Patreon, I will put this video episode in case you feel like staring at my unnaturally blonde hair while listening. I will also put the audio up for you guys. And I'm going to publish this now. I really tried to stay back from the microphone, so I'm hoping maybe less mouth sounds. Well, I just heard my own mouth sounds. Ugh. Okay, I'm signing off. That's it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Love you all. Please, please, please keep sending your reviews, your DMs, your voicemails. If I haven't responded, I will. I promise. And I appreciate each and every one of you and hope you are having a fantastical Monday. Love you. Goodbye.